Speaking of health, better health. Now, a few weeks ago, I ended up with, I remember thinking at the time it was the product of a new CPAP mask, and that it was all the wind blowing through my mask that was causing a little scratch in my throat. And within a couple of days, I had this nasty cough. I thought I was going to slip a disc. It was that bad. I did not get to see the doctor because the cough cleared up in a couple of days, and then I had to go out of town, and so I was apparently not contagious any longer. I didn't worry about spreading it to people on airline flights, and the like, and to family. But uh, I later learned from a coworker who apparently had the same thing the same week, that it was an upper respiratory infection, and her doctor told her, he said, "There's nothing I can do to treat this. You're just going to have to wait it out." And I think this has been going around the area, but I can remember thinking I was going to cough up my lungs, and my ribs hurt, and my back hurt. And it was pretty nasty stuff. And then I always end up usually with something like that for about 2 weeks with a dry cough and some stuffiness. And this time my ears were even stuffed up. It lingered for a long time, some of the after effects with it. But I think it's the worst of it's over with. But last night I was trying to get to sleep, and I thought I'm feeling something again, a tickle in my throat, and I thought it can't possibly come down with something 2 days in or 2 weeks in a row like that. But that's a question to pose to the good doctor, who, by the way, is joining us in studio this morning, Dr. Jonathan Tripp from Tripp Family Medicine. Actually, it's just returned from a trip, Europe, right?
That's right. Yeah, we
We
did.
didn't tell people a lot about that on the air because while you're away, we don't want them to, think that it's discount shopping at the Tripp residence.
That's
But
right. Yeah,
but
exactly.
now that you're back, you're home. But you were in Ireland for a stretch.
We actually went to Paris and London, and today, actually, a lot of my discussion focuses around that experience. And everybody is excited about the Eiffel Tower, or going to the Louvre, or seeing Big Ben in London, and those are all wonderful things. But what's really interesting is I had a very serious look at death and causes of death by being in Paris and going through cathedrals and the catacombs.
Oh
And,
yeah, the
it,
historical.
it was really impressive. The catacombs, which take you all of about, 30 minutes to walk through, at least the section that they have a tour through, they predict that there's 50,000 people buried down there. And it's really their bones are buried, excuse me, because they had such filling up of the churchyards and the cemeteries that became a health hazard. First about the time of the plague, but over several centuries. And so I want to tell a little bit about the fun of that story.
You were over there at the same time as a friend of mine,
Oh yeah,
and then she started in Venice to Paris and then to Brussels and Antwerp. But I've been looking at pictures. Paris looks very quiet this time of year, and it also looked like it was warmer than Idaho.
it was. I think Idaho got a little colder just for a brief period, but it was all about the same. We left here, and the temperatures were in the low to mid 60s, and would drop down a little bit, and we got there, and it was about the same. But
Those churches in Europe, by the way, some of them are even built to understand inside they have the bones of the plague victims who died, and that was to allow people to realize that you've got to get yourself right with God because life is not something that.
yeah, no, in fact, one of the things that was impressed me was I was going through Westminster Abbey in London, and not allowed to take pictures in there, but I was reading various people's tombs and their epitaphs, and one of them written by the daughter of a guy in 1538 pretty much said, whether you are, commoner or royalty, as you read this, remember that your what you do in this life, I hope you'll spend the time to prepare for the next, because we're all going there.
Mhm.
And I thought, her words are just so common and perfect for today, in modern language. And yet this was written about 500 years ago. So it's very impressive to see how this whole process of death that we don't confront very much, except for,
They didn't maybe even fear it like we do, right?
oh, I bet they did. But, what's so impressive is when you walk through the catacombs and you're seeing bones that tell lots of stories. In fact, I want to talk about some of those stories. Um, it really makes you wonder. Wait a minute, how does all this work? And why were there large groups of people that died all at one time? And we have this tragedy that happened while I was gone in Las Vegas, and we have I can't remember the exact number, but about 59 people that were killed and several hundred more that were injured. That's the single biggest um, tragedy in our country, on our land, for years and years, probably since the Civil War. Um, on the other hand, you're taking times where people were at war, where there's illness, and just hundreds and thousands of people were being wiped out in a week or two.
We've got a short break, but we've got more coming up with Dr. Jonathan Tripp from Tripp Family Medicine here in Twin Falls. It's 8:40. We're at 44. Bill Colley with you as well. And you're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Dr. Jonathan Tripp joining us in studio this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. 44 right now at 8:42. Better Health with Tripp Family Medicine. The doctor doesn't say it often, but they have a slogan at the office called "Life's too short not to feel good." Boy, doesn't that tie in with it?
That absolutely, yeah. We sound like we're being morbid today, but the truth is just a fantastic experience going to Europe for the first time. And you know, I would say my favorite points really were Notre Dame and the Louvre. And yet, what I'm bringing back that really heavily impressed me was this whole thing about um, the catacombs and the multiple tombs in the various cathedrals, and just and lots of big groups of people dying at the same time. Some of the stories I learned through the catacombs are that they exhumed bones from what they then called hospitals, which were really more like a hostel that people could pay a penny or less to stay. And so it's basically a place you can hang out and hope to get a little care, some food.
They
It's
keep you
not,
warm, in other
yeah,
words.
yeah. But where they had bodies that were buried in relatively small plot of land, where you had layers of about 30 layers of people, 10 or 20 across, that had nothing in between them, no sediment between them. So when they were exhumed in the 1800s, they were able to, determine these people all had to be buried quickly. And so, this is the kind of thing that we have no understanding of. In fact, you have to go back to my grandparents, or pretty close to my grandparents, to even have somebody that has a memory of polio, let alone any severe illness that wipes out large populations. So when we get a little scare like the measles that came out through Disneyland about a year ago, that's a big deal because we don't really know what that'll do. We have immunizations that help protect us against that, and overall, our population has been free of major illness that wipes out large populations for generations now. And so now this whole feeling of, well, I don't know if I really want to do that. I don't know if they're really as safe as we want. Well, compared to having large parts of the community literally either dead or maimed, the immunizations are a beautiful change in our medicine. So, I'll leave that there. But it is true that we are now providing immunizations at our office. So if you have little kids and they need to get those, come see us. One-stop shop for that. But let me talk to you about the bones with stories to tell. What was really interesting is through the bones, they were able to determine people that had had major injuries like breaks or even surgeries that they'd healed from, and others that obviously didn't. And so you could see injuries, you could see the effects of hard labor, a lot of arthritis in relatively young people. In fact, your average age of death in that time frame would be in the 40s and in the 50s. If you were in your late 50s, you're a pretty old person. And we're talking, the 15, 16, 1700s. And so you got hard labor showing up and illness, and the bones rarely show illness because illness doesn't have time to wipe out the bones. It's
It
quick.
was
It's
very
soft
fast,
tissue.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, your organs struggle and die, but your bones are still intact. So determining somebody's cause of death based on their bones really is difficult if it's due to an illness. So, well, how has medicine changed in our time? We've got all these great machines and technology, and big hospitals and health insurance that everybody loves and can't understand. Things like that. But the truth is the biggest things that have improved over time is probably our hygiene and clean water. That's the number one. So if we talk about humanitarian trips like we did last year, a lot of it starts with, can you get a community clean water? Because that extends their lifespan dramatically. Um, Other things that you think of, improved wound care or surgical technique. I mean, you can go back into the, well before 1500 and they're doing surgeries. That doesn't mean they were all successful, but sterile technique has really changed what can be done, under the knife. Clean water, antibiotics. We caution against overusing antibiotics, which I absolutely agree with. But a simple wound um, could kill you. Something that you got to cut or stepped on a nail. We talk about tetanus now. We're so used to just having our tetanus shot, which by the way is an immunization, um, and that tetanus shot keeps us from what people know as lockjaw or Guillain-Barré, which paralyzes your whole body and makes you all your muscles tighten up, and it's a very ugly, painful, feverish death. And we don't see that. We don't even know it exists. Why? Because most people get a tetanus shot, but the cause of tetanus is in the soil. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere, and so it's there. It's just we don't see it because we have better hygiene and we have an immunization for it. Um, but these simple wounds, like if you broke a leg or a broken arm, especially if the bone penetrated the skin, almost guaranteed that bone is going to get infected and you're going to either lose the limb if they were smart enough to cut it off, or you're going to die within, a couple of weeks.
Cutting it off too without any anesthesia.
Yeah, I mean, about the best they had was some alcohol and, guys holding you down. So, yeah, this is and you think, oh, that's so ancient, it's so out of date. But the truth is we think of like the hurricane victims in Puerto Rico or right now Costa Rica that it hit last week. You've got people that are totally isolated because their bridges are out, their roads are out, and even though they may have had access to antibiotics or medical care, they don't now. And if they don't have clean water, they're as good as the people were back in the 1500s. They're at the same level. So it's a it's a very impressive that it's not that big a time frame that we've had the changes we've had. It's really mostly been since about 1900.
And if you think about it too, we're probably not all that far removed from a large disaster or bug resistant,
No, let's talk about the Zika virus that scared the whole nation and all of the Caribbean last year.
mhm.
We haven't had big terrible things from it, but could have. We have hurricanes that have hit our shores 3 times in about as many weeks. We have earthquakes elsewhere. It's really amazing how, think about Houston, how quickly Houston got shut down. And Houston's a major metropolitan area, and then Miami after that. Imagine you do that a couple times on the southern and eastern seaboard, and we got a major part of our country that, we've really dropped right back to the old days, so to speak. We might have that car in the garage, but it's flooded. You can't use it. So anyway, that brought me a lot of perspective. Coming back to saying, hey, what's important, but also saying really becoming appreciative, grateful for the things that we have and the easy access that we have to healthcare. It really is easy here, even though we have our own complaints.
Want to mention Dr. Jonathan Tripp in studio with us this morning, and we're talking about some of the things he witnessed in Europe about ancient medicine and ancient lifespans as well. And we're at 10 minutes now away from 9 o'clock. Telephone number is 736-0300. And we do want to point out a couple of things going on at your office before we, wrap up the program. We have plenty of time, but
Yeah,
might as well mention you've got a couple of
here,
events
here
though.
on the brighter side, now that we've all gone through summer and we're into the fall, it's time for some skin cleanup. We got our cosmetic stuff going in full force. We kind of kicked it off early spring or late spring with a peel party, which we had overwhelming response. People
Mhm.
wanted in. We only allowed 30 people to come because we want to make sure they all get individual attention. It's $100 to reserve a spot, and we're going to do two of them this fall. One October 19th, and
Week
the
from tomorrow.
so it's on Thursday evening, and I believe the other one's a Thursday, although I haven't looked that far ahead, but it's November 9th. And they go from 3 to 6 p.m. You will have an appointment time. There's going to be a lot of fun that goes with it. We do some hand peels. We teach about micro resurfacing. We can talk about Botox and fillers and all the fun stuff, what I call the cleanup stuff. The mainstay for most of what we do are chemical peels that nobody else knows what you're doing unless you tell them, until they start seeing how good your skin's looking. Really, within about 3 months, we can take usually close to 5 years, sometimes as many as 10 years off your face pretty quickly, and not at great expense. These are not like facelifts. You will not look funny. We won't give you duck lips. I'll tell you what, in my travels, I saw so many people with bad cosmetic technique, that had been used on their face. I can pick them out from a mile away. So we'll do our best not to ever let somebody pick you out that way, other than just saying, "Wow, your skin looks really awesome."
Of course, you're talking about the medieval period in Europe.
Did they have that good a skin?
No, because they had multiple poxes and other outbreaks.
Yeah, and they're pure sun exposure unless you were royalty and hiding under the roof with a big hat and makeup, especially if you were under King Louis XVI's court. So, yeah, we do enjoy a lot of beautiful conveniences, but the fun part about the cosmetics in our office is it comes with 15 years of experience. In fact, my practice for 5 years was only cosmetics down in the Phoenix area. And so this is not something brand new to me. This is not new to our office, but we've kept it under wraps because we wanted the community to know that we really are a family medicine clinic, and the cosmetics is the fun side.
You also mentioned we were in a break. Modern Europe, they have some bad health habits in the sense that tobacco use there is still really prevalent.
Yeah, it was very significantly noticeable in Paris. Many of the teenage, early 20-year-olds are smoking, which is quite a bit different than here. We have some, but they're more the rare exception. And then London, there's more than I would say there is in the U.S., but still dramatically less than Paris. So, if it's cool to smoke in Paris, it sure appears to be, but health-wise, there's almost nothing I can tell you that would be better to get rid of than smoking. There's just so many ramifications, so many health hazards, and yet, at age 18 or 22, you'll never die, right?
Now, one old joke about the English was that they had bad dental health. That, though, I think has changed. The Austin Powers movies made fun of the whole notion of bad teeth, but as I understand it, dental practice there has gotten much better in recent decades.
I mean, my perception is that it's equivalent to what we're seeing here now. So that's interesting. The new world became the new standard, and it still is. And can sound as biased as I want, but now having been there, they have the beautiful history. Absolutely loved the food. Um, you know, I'd go back in a heartbeat, except somebody's got to go to work. So, but the truth is America really is the standard. And if for your listeners, what'll be interesting to hear is many of the people we talked to uh, were in favor of our president. It was really interesting.
Which I
Mm,
don't get that through
through
other
media at
channels.
all.
Yeah.
No, many of the people, especially if they were business owners, they really held President Trump in high esteem, even though even the media there were, quoting people that called him foolish and things like that. But I just found that interesting because we weren't even bringing up political discussions. It's just when they found out we're American, they would volunteer that.
I wanted to point out for people who travel there, if you end up getting ill in Europe, uh, your insurance, if you have Blue Cross, for instance, in Idaho, it won't apply, will it?
Not at all. Travel insurance is what you need to do if you're going out of the country. That's the only way you'll have health coverage. Yeah, your U.S. based insurance has no help for you. So consider that if you're going out of the country. That's not a bad thing to bring up. So let come do our peel party with us, or find a spot for your wife if you don't want to do it. But we, women really in their 20s on up are probably all interested in the things that we're doing at these peel parties. So it's this is really, in my opinion, other than kids, this is the fun side of being a doctor. because it is not threatening. I'm dealing with healthy people, and really, almost all of them are very happy with the results that they get.
Now, most of these people coming to the peel parties are women, right?
Yep, yep, not all, but most are. And so, I can't even tell you the average age because it spans, probably from late 20s to 60s, 70s even. And so it's a wide range. And so bring a friend. I know there's a deal or discount we did last time. We probably are this time,
Mhm.
where if you bring a couple of friends, that everybody gets a discount on coming. But better call our number soon. Let me give you that, because last time we were out of luck and had to put people on a waiting list. It is 208 933 4400. That's 208 933 4400. You can also reach us on our webpage at trippfamilymedicine.com, and at Tripp Family Medicine on Facebook. And in fact, we've had a whole bunch of people chime in on Facebook while we were gone. It was absolutely a lot of fun just to see, even when we were at a distance, how much good interaction there is going on at our office.
Got about 30 seconds left. Is it that men don't care about the looks of their skin?
That is not true. Uh, and, and sometimes their wife has to get them started. But I would say even our tougher cowboys at a certain point start to say, hey, this looks a little rough. Can I clean that up some? And a lot of it is helping you avoid skin cancers and the like. So it's not just foo-foo, but it's a lot of fun foo-foo.
We'll talk again soon.
Oh, yeah.
And great to hear the stories about the Tripp. Dr. Jonathan Tripp in studio with us this morning from Tripp Family Medicine here in Twin Falls. And we'll rejoin Better Health with Tripp Family Medicine next week at 8:30 Wednesday morning. In the meantime, we've got Fox News just ahead. On Top Story with Bill Colley on News Radio 1310, KLIX and News Radio 1310.com, and we're at 43.